Hey there, Groovesters, Groove Stars, people all around the world. So happy to be here with you with another Groove Growth session. Lessons from the CEO with CEO of Love and Happiness, Dr. Vandy Coulter. Vandy, so glad to spend some time with you, man. I know you've had one heck of an entrepreneurial journey.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so very much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Originally, I'm excited to be here. I am thrilled. You are amazing. So I get to speak to your amazing tribe, and I'm thrilled.
Well, excellent. And so are we. But take us back, man. I mean, you've had a very storied background. It's been incredible, very, very different. Take us back, if you will. I always love to hear the beginning. Where did you start and make that thing, that jump into the entrepreneurial world? What did that look like back when?
Okay, so my entrepreneurial journey started in the music business. It didn't start in therapy. Well, kind of did, because I remember the fact that, my dad died when I was young. So my mom was in a crazy relationship, and I could see myself at 12 trying to basically mediate between them. So it was kind of weird when I think about it. But my entrepreneurial journey started, I was in the music industry, 20 years, part of hip hop when it first started. You can check my credentials. It's real. It's not, you look on the back of Salt and Pepper's first album, Public Enemy's first album. I helped break all of those. I had my own radio show in New York for 10 years. It was only 5 hip hop shows before hip hop mattered. It was just me, Red Alert, Chuck Chill. Anyone who knows hip hop will go, oh, I know exactly what this guy just said. And, so I started as a DJ, doing parties, promoting, always was kind of about bringing people together for a good time. Indirectly, I do that now to bring them together for Love and Happiness, the company. But I was always doing a lot of entrepreneurial things. So I picked up a lot of unconscious competencies about filling up even stadiums. I started promoting concerts, and I can go into so many different baskets of each of those parts of my life that I'd feel better if you told me which basket you want me to pull from.
Well, let's start from the idea of, it's one thing to be in the music business. It's another thing to fill a stadium. I mean, where did you learn those, or how did you get those skills to be able to promote? Because so many people watching us right now are thinking, man, if I could attract a big tribe like that, that would be incredible. What did it look like for you?
It started out with the fact that I needed people and I didn't know where to get them from. It's the problem. It's solving the problem, right? So when I first get into, DJing in the streets, and you just want to get popular back then. So in hip hop, I'll use hip hop, and hopefully, you as someone who has some bars in you and can rap, you'll kind of understand this. In the beginning, hip hop was, and I just got interviewed on PBS yesterday, as a matter of fact. So there's something they're doing with hip hop, but it was always about the DJ. That's why it was Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, because the DJ was the star and the rappers were actually the secondary. So now I'm going into this passion. I asked my mom, do we know anybody? I don't know anybody. Don't we have a cousin? You're just trying to find a niche, because it was still street level. It wasn't mainstream. It didn't get picked up. It wasn't radio. It wasn't about money. It was the art. So she was like, no, we don't know anybody. And I used to be extremely shy. I had, people followed me, and I would just be like, why? Leave me alone. I want to be by myself, read my comic books. I'm good. And so I guess I just was able to see the problem is I don't know people. And I then shifted my mindset to be bold enough to first I created flyers. Those flyers, actually, many of them, became almost like artifacts. I had a guy reach out to me from overseas, and he just bought a bunch of flyers for like $2 or $3 grand from me, just the old flyers, just like, because these are like historical pieces, right? And so he was like, so I just started, just going out, distributing flyers, talking to folk and getting them excited. All of a sudden, I'm realizing some competencies in terms of kind of pulling people into a vision. And then I leaned into it. And there was no videos on how to do it back then. There was no, masterminds. It was just, you just kind of look at the problem and you just lean into it and run towards it. And I just really just started. So I ended up promoting parties first in places that normally did not let hip hop in. So evidently there was something I was doing that I did not till later years, reverse engineer, where they were able to trust me, they were able to believe in me, and my parties, they were safe in the season where hip hop actually can go south kind of fast at the party. And I was getting these places, people like, how you getting the President's Chateau or the this, and these places that normally only adults can get in. And that ended up leading to when I was on the radio. I went to broadcasting school, and then I ended up getting on radio. And I went to this park. It was called Tompkins Park in Brooklyn, New York. It is all of capable of holding 40,000 people. It's just huge. It's a huge park. And I'm now on the radio, and I actually started putting a strategy together. When I first got to the radio station, it was an unknown station. They were even paying for their own records. That's how unknown they were. By the time I finished, all the other folk would go to the record company, CBS and stuff, and they would say they would have to use my name to get free records. They would be like, I'm on the station Vandy's on. Oh, sure, we'll give you records. Because I did so many grassroots things to bring brand awareness. So I ended up saying, okay, first, I don't know anybody. And now hip hop is getting, there's more prominent figures, as I said, the Grandmaster Flashes and stuff. So I put a team together, and and I am young, and we did this. I put a team together. I leaned into everyone's strengths. One of the individuals, he loved taking pictures. So I said, you know what? His name was Irv Panton. Matter of fact, pictures he had took, including with me and some other hip hop figures, was just featured on 42nd Street. There's an exhibit that's still there on 42nd Street, Times Square, a hip hop exhibit because of his photos, and I'm in some of them. And it's right there on 42nd Street in New York right now, and NBC News and all of them just did this big thing. I couldn't make it, would have loved to. So I said, okay, so if you follow me, I made sure everyone in the team, I understood their why. And after I understood their why, I was like, I'm going to make sure we try to fulfill everybody's why. So before it was all said and done, he followed us to take pictures. I ended up helping him bridge that into all the hip hop magazines. So they were buying his pictures, and that took him into a whole nother stratosphere. So we would do this thing where if I saw, say, Grandmaster Flash, or if I saw, the various names that I'll just stop there with, I would say, hey, Irv, I'm going to go stand by the bar like I'm just hanging out. You come like you don't know us as the photographer. Back then, photographers had the big camera. And then after that, you just say, hey, Grandmaster Flash, can I get a picture with you and Van DC? He don't know who I am. I'm going to act like, oh, yeah, of course, I'm a star too, And then we shake hands. And I'm like, hey, man, let's change numbers. Let's talk. And I ended up building relationships with everybody.
I love this.
Every night we go to clubs. It didn't matter if it was, by the time I'm now on the radio, Run DMC and everybody is fans of my show. When I meet Run, I'm a big fan. And he's like, man, we only listen to you, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But before that, it was that grassroots effort. So I back then, it's just the grassroots still when I did the concert. So there were hip hop legends, Cold Crush Brothers, Kool Moe Dee, the Treacherous Three, these kind of guys. So I go to this park in Brooklyn, and I'm like, we could fill this whole park up. It easily holds 50,000 people. So I go to the police station. I'm probably 22, 23 at the time. I'll even send you a picture if you want to put it in the screen. I just sent it to PBS when we was talking about it. So it's right in my drive. So the police, I said, we want a permit. Back then it was called Tompkins Park. It's called something else now, maybe Herbert Von King or something else. So I said, I want to get a permit, and we need a lot of police support. So the police officer, older gentleman, looks at me and he leans back. Hey, Bob, this kid thinks he's going to fill up Tompkins Park. And they bust out laughing. And then he turns to me and he says, listen, the OJs have been in this park and they barely got 8,000, 9,000 people. And then he began to name all these other, amazing, well-known R&B acts. And he says, what makes you think you're going to fill this park? And I was like, I'm just I'm just young enough, I'm dumb enough, whatever. And I'm just saying like, no, we're gonna fill it up. And he said, well, we'll give you one officer and your permit. Permit was for like 12 to 5 p.m. So I had all these groups come. It's not just filled to capacity. If the park held, say, 50,000 bodies standing up, it's a huge park. Outside the park, there's easily another 10, 12,000 people outside the park. It's crazy. Never been nothing like it since. I got the videos, got pictures, all that stuff to prove it. And it was peaceful until it ended. It was peaceful. and while it's peaceful, people are getting crushed at the stage because the crowd kept trying to get closer and closer. So we had to let ambulances in, and I'm throwing people off the stage. And I get to one white guy and I'm like, get off the stage. And he turns to me and shows his badge. And I'm like, you are my friend. You stay, you know? And then he turns to me and he says, listen, I'm the only officer here. We didn't expect this. Would you mind ending early? I said, no. You didn't believe me. I came to you. I said, send plenty of police. I have a permit till 5 and we're going till 5. And that's what we did. And it was just amazing.
Wow. So, you know, what's interesting, what you're saying here, and I think there's a really big lesson for younger folks that are online right now, because today's not a day where flyers work as well. It's a lot harder to do that kind of thing. But it isn't all that different than showing up to meetups on a regular basis, going to networking events online that happen every single day, finding people that have blogs, that have little groups that get together. In other words, the grassroots online is possible today in the same way, maybe not to the degree that you did, Mandy, but you know, you did something amazing. But anybody can do that. Find out where your people are, easier than ever, and then go hang out with them and make some relationships, bring some value to those folks. So what do you think was your biggest takeaway from that enormous success? What did you take away from that?
You know, what I really came away with was the relationships, because all the artists came just because I asked. Nobody was paid to show or perform. Everybody came because evidently of how I interacted with them. That, you know, these are guys coming up from the Bronx into Brooklyn, which is a long haul. And these are guys who are very accomplished in their, you know, some of them, this is when it was now being recorded. Some of them had records out, and everybody's just coming. And it wasn't just, oh, he has a radio show. It's because we have relationships. So I think the biggest thing for me that I walked away with originally was the power of relationships. That when folk just not just respect you, but kind of have that relationship with you, there's nothing stopping your dream. You know, our dreams are usually, we're thinking money, but it's really relationships.
It really is. I love to say it takes a long time for people to get this, because you hear it all the time. If you serve people and help others, the money will follow. And it's so true. When you put that relationship first, it's amazing what can come behind that. Okay, so you're in your early 20s, you have this massive thing happen. You stayed in the music business for a little while, but then you transitioned. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, by the time this all turned into, it went from radio to producing. I produced for every major record company at this time. I thought that's going to be my life. And then my first wife had died the day before my birthday while she was buying my birthday gifts in a car accident. And at that point, I think one label just gave me 20 grand to start a project. And, you know, this is in 89. And I'm just, you know, we got 3 and 5-year-old girls, you know, and it's just, I'm like, I'm just fried. I'm done. It did 2 things that later mattered. But the first thing it did was I just said, I got to get out of New York, because, you know, I didn't want to raise my kids in New York. In that season, New York had a different frequency. So I checked with my attorney. He told me about the suburb, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. He said, a lot of athletes buy houses there. You should check this out. So I went over there because I was doing really well at that time, and bought a house there, raised my kids. And as I'm widowed for 12 years, raising them, I'm noticing that a lot of the people I'm meeting, this is during the time that I'm building relationships in church. because I didn't grow up in church. And I'm noticing a lot of couples are struggling. A lot of couples are bickering a lot. And I'm sitting there like, man, me and my wife was 8 years and it was rocking. And that's just the grace of God. It wasn't nothing I did. I give her more credit than me. And I'm looking at like, man, you guys don't know how suddenly this can end. You should be, so I would always lean in and try to, encourage reconciliation. And so I ended up ultimately, when I got remarried, going on 24 years now, we started some years ago, just starting doing couples retreats and, leaning into marriages and relationships that, just need to get the junk out, get the toxicity out, get the hurt and disappointment and resentment out, and just start to get all of that out. And we just started pulling a lot of people from a lot of places. And that kind of became kind of the focal point. Aside from also when I pastored, and we're going to plant another church here, but I pastored for 14 years as well. So between serving people spiritually and relationally, it just was always about serving people.
So that's a pretty interesting, I mean, to go from the music scene, the hip hop world, to obviously a pivotal event that happened, tragic event, the loss of your first wife, and to then move to a space of, oh man, I want to serve people. And then you see all this mess in relationships and you're helping those people. What do you think? I mean, I certainly can see a common thread, but what do you think is the common thread between all those areas, hip hop, pastor, relationship counseling?
I would love to hear what you see. I mean, you've got eyes that go deep. What do you see?
I think it's back to that same relationships thing, man. It's if you think about, one of the problems in the music business is the lack of trust, and who do you know, and who's backstabbing this, and who's doing all that, and building that trust thing is very big. Obviously, as a pastor, it's huge, and to be a counselor for people going through difficult times, because I mean, not to be crazy, but I would imagine that most of the people that you work with, Vandy, are people who are struggling, not the people who are doing well. The people doing well don't generally come to see you. Am I right?
They don't come to me. If I can tell you, I've been counseling 20 years, presidential status with the American Association. I can tell you this. If I had $1 for every time a couple said, if this doesn't work, we're getting divorced from the console. And I'm like, you basically wait till you're dead. Then you show up with the, revive us, give us a miracle. And I'm like, okay, we can work as long as there's still some core things we have to discover in terms of, there has to at least be either a why, like we have children, we have, investments, we have, a why. There has to be a why if we've lost all of that, like luster through toxicity, anger, resentment, and such. Or there has to be somebody still willing to fight. And the other person has to at least be willing to be revived. You know what I mean? Because other than that, they will not see success. If both people are like, I don't want it, I can't give you a 6-pack standing in the gym with you. You have to do the work, So you're right. It is, a lot of people do show up. Unfortunately, I always am smiling, like a couple I just did a consult with yesterday, when it's the damage is mitigated. It's not messy. And they were wise enough to say, hey, let's get some help. Let's not, you know what I mean? Versus, if I had a nickel for every couple that was heading towards divorce, that we had to work. And many of them mostly we were able to turn things around, and on our website, there's testimonials there. And loveandhappiness.net. And you go to the testimonials, you'll see some really cool testimonials, couples that were at the brink of divorce that ended up now back doing things what grown folk do. So it's pretty cool.
That's a good thing, man, because there's an awful lot. I saw a statistic, and I'd love to hear your take on this. Very well-known study that came out just recently, sharing that in today's world, today meaning 2023, we are 16% more sad as a human race than we were 20 to 30 years ago. Yeah. Man, what do you think that's about? Why, that's terrible. I mean, that just sounds like a horrible thing.
Yeah, it is. And it's in what you just said. I think the biggest like subliminal reason that's going unnoticed is the humanity has been disconnected. I don't care if social media connects us all over the world. We're more disconnected than ever before. We don't have community connections. We don't have relational connections. You know, couples are just, as they are growing in success, they're moving into areas with no family connections and they don't know how to build them. And everybody's their own tribe. So you're eating off your own flesh instead of enjoying, you know, relational kind of interaction. So I think that the sadness is because there's an isolation of being alone in a crowded room that is in couples, marriages, individuals, walks of life, school age, everything, and everyone's on their phone connected, but that's not real connection. You know, you're looking at somebody's highlights on the phone and it makes you feel worse about your life, you know? So I just think that it's like a cyclical feeding off its own energy or synergy of separation, disappointment, anxiety. Nobody understands loneliness. Now I go into these psychological spaces that depression creeps in and all these other things. And it's hard for people. You know, we used to go out and just play and meet people and just, you know, I'm so glad my first world was that world, not this world. You know, I tell my daughters all the time, y'all can have this, you know, because it's just not, I don't think it's ever going to put that genie back in the bottle. I think there'll be pockets of it, whether or not like we create it in our churches, in our groups, in our organizations, in our, you know, kind of initiatives, you know, marketing groups and stuff. But it's not the same anymore, you know, and I think it's par for the course now for people to have some emotional things to now overcome, you know, which again, you would think that would be something they would look to work through, but most people just bow their head and just keep on going through while they're walking downhill psychologically and emotionally instead of reaching out, even though there's a lot more people getting therapy now, a lot more people, you know, leaning into mental health. It is obviously something that's not weird and kind of like a negative stigma anymore. But I don't think that people are self-aware enough to realize, hey, that step can make a big difference for me or my family.
I think you're so right. I mean, you read these reports and talk about older folks, and what do they say is the number one reason for their happiness? It's their community, it's their friends, the people they're surrounded by. And on the other hand, it's like, I think back to my childhood when I was growing up, and I grew up overseas and I was in Spain, and we lived in a town. There was only 1,000 people in that town in the wintertime. It was a beach town. So in the summertime, it was packed and nobody saw anybody. But in the wintertime, you knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody. And it was so normal for us as kids to be anywhere, somebody else's house, having chocolate. My mom didn't know where we were. She just knew we were in the community somewhere, and everybody was watching out for everybody. Everybody knew your business too. Well, that was part of it, whatever. But at least there was that, it was
connection.
You could grow up as a kid. We played ball in the streets.
Yes.
All the time. And every now and then somebody would break a window and it was okay. You know, it was, you know, and now you're right. This isolation that is created largely by the very thing that we think is uniting us, social media, et cetera, it's tough, man. I mean, it must make it really, I mean, yes, of course, I agree with you 100%. More people are getting help for it. And rightly so, because people are kind of a mess. They don't know what to do.
Yeah, and the isolation, even our entertainment is isolating now. You know, people are putting on the, you know, the goggles, the you know, the gaming, the, you know, they're doing the Oculus, they're doing, everything is virtual, and it's not reality for us anymore. It's virtual reality, it's social reality, and so I think that's also making it kind of, you know, wider the gap with the way it's so easy now to be in your own bubble. And then you start to realize you don't really have connections and friends. And many people don't have friends that they actually say, you know, if we just want to go on a double date, if we just want to go and all get together and celebrate the holidays, not family stuff, but social. There's social circles, I think, have shrank tremendously. And people have just quietly, it's almost like if you've ever gained weight slowly, you don't even realize it until one day you step on the scale and go, oh my gosh, like what just happened? People are just getting further and further into this isolated kind of frame. That paradigm is, this is normal. It's not. We are designed to be connected. We're designed to interact. We're designed, that's why we feel lonely when we're not, because that's not how we were made.
That's right. We're warm-blooded mammals and we travel in packs. And that's the idea. So what do you say to the budding entrepreneur who's on their journey? They're relatively early on the journey, and they're feeling a little lonely about all this. What would you recommend to that person to help them overcome that so that they have the strength to keep going?
Yeah, that's the key part, is having the strength to keep going, because in the beginning, no one's supposed to believe in you. No one is supposed to lay down and just open the vault to you. Nobody is supposed, it has to start by looking within yourself and believing in yourself. And that part starts, that has to be a continual work, especially, and it never changes. I've done sales from everything. I mean, telemarketing back in the days was the way, when you're young, to make a few dollars. I've sold cars for dealers. I've done all kind of sales, vacuum cleaners. You get comfortable getting doors closed in your face and it doesn't shake you. I remember I started a network marketing company back when that first came out. And it went really well. We even had Deion Sanders as a spokesperson for this particular company because I shared the vision and came on board. And then I got called a pastor, and I really couldn't figure out how to do this business that's got me traveling. And it kind of didn't live, if I could say it that way. It should have. And I'm going to circle back to this particular vision. But my point is that while I'm doing these things, I had to hear so many no's. And a different NFL friend of mine, NFL player, he said to me before we started that journey, he said, Vandy, I want you to get comfortable with this. Everybody's not going to see it. They're not going to see it. And I was, if he did not say that, I probably would have never had the fortitude to keep going, because I thought, of course, everybody's going to see it. It just makes sense, which is why when I met you with your limbic thinking, I was like, oh my God, you just changed my life, because I kept saying it makes sense, but it doesn't matter if it makes sense. The question is whether or not the messaging is touching that part of the brain, that it's not going to be about sense, but it's about how it makes me feel, So I would say having that fortitude to trust yourself, because it is going to be slim pickings in the beginning, and having done different initiatives, starting the music business where nobody knew me, to, like I said, now you look on, Salt and Pepper and all these other people, you look in movies, Run DMC movies, I'm in there, all that. It started with me just believing in myself, and I just had that when nobody else gave me anything, I would just still be humble enough to go, okay, but I believed in myself. Mm-hmm. And then you just have to, because people will smell that, that has a scent to it. When you know who you are, or you have something, people pick up on that. They could just be like, wow, they're like, man, this guy is, and so people tend to follow the visions that and I did one initiative originally where we would do quarterly events. It was actually a faith-based initiative. And it was Christian Quarterly. I ended up getting a Liberty Bell from Philadelphia City Council for this, and for economic development. My vision was to put what I call kings and queens, the CEOs of Independence Blue Cross, major healthcare, banks, PNC, the bank presidents and stuff, in the same room with everyday entrepreneurs who are more than their credit score, who were really like, you know what, I can't get the business loans, I can't get what I need, but if they heard my vision, if they seen my passion, it could make a difference. Like on Shark Tank, sometimes that makes all the difference. They could see you. And so when I first started the event, I went to Commerce Bank in New Jersey, and this is when networking first came out, and he said, hey man, listen, it sounds great. It was a former mayor who's now a VP for Commerce Bank at the time. And he's telling me, and it's true, because I went to the Philadelphia mayor's network event, and there was about 20 people there. And he said, listen, you tell me there's going to be 250 people at your network event. He said, I just had a team of attorneys come in and a team of doctors come in, and we sponsored them. And if they each had 20 people, they had 20,000. What makes you think you're going to have 250? Now, at that time, I'm now really just operating spiritually, which is why my focus was faith-based to call it Christian Quarterly. So I said, it's the anointing that makes the difference. And that ends up becoming our slogan for the company. Well, at that first event, this is while I'm widowed, put a team together and had about 12 people on my team. We built it, did it like a project management. We got some stakeholders, did everything we needed to do. Ended up having 250 people there. I'm widowed 12 years, and I end up meeting my wife. Well, she met me. I didn't meet her because I didn't remember meeting her because I really was just focusing on everything. But as a result, a friend who brought her is calling me saying, hey, she wants to meet you. She was at the event. Well, we end up, here we are almost 24 years later of marriage and 27 years of knowing each other, being together. So I think what it was for me was just being resolute. Now, that same Christian organization before 9/11, I was getting, with the organization paying for the food and the facility, the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, the National Constitution Center. Now, this is a Christian organization. Now, they all told me, we don't want to do this for Christians because we'd have to do it for the Jewish community, the Muslim community, the this, and we don't want to be faith. We only deal with corporations. Because of whatever it was that allowed me to communicate the vision, Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia, before 9/11, they sponsored at least 4 events. That means they paid for the food, gave us the facility. All we had to do was fundraise. All we had to do was bring people. We did celebrity auctions, people from the news, athletes, and all this stuff. Got stuff from the Eagles and stuff to give away. We did museums, mayor's reception suites, places that faith-based never could touch. And I'm still trying to realize what unconscious competencies are buried that allowed me to do that, and even in the future, because those unconscious competencies, it takes someone on the outside to go, this is what you're doing, because it's unconscious. It's something in how I'm saying it. It's something in what they see, and I'm delivering. But they don't know that on the day I show up. You follow me? It's not like they say, oh, you did 7 others, because each of these organizations, we ended up having a board of directors of the Government Relations of Independence Blue Cross, the executive director of New Jersey American Water, PNC bank president, 3 other bank presidents on my board. And it was a working board. It wasn't a name board. And I don't know to this day, if you ask me with a gun, how did I, and what do I say, and what, it's hard because it's unconscious competency.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? I got to say, at least one thing is for sure, and that is passion is contagious. So whatever it was, it's the same thing that got 50,000 people to show up at Tompkins Park is what got 250 people to show up for the Faith Quarterly. And you know what I'm saying? That thing, that characteristic. And if you were to say, like, what is like one thing that you've observed in entrepreneurs that is a characteristic that really serves them and worth cultivating, what would that be?
It is the ability, I think, what separates entrepreneurs is almost the dynamic I explain to people between lions and sheep. So when I was a teenager, I worked in the World Trade Center, and they had a whole bunch of elevators. And I'm just this little Black kid in this just predominantly white environment, right? And I would walk into the World Trade Center at 16. And when I walked in, everyone's standing in the middle, and the elevators, all the elevators, and I'm looking and I'm like, none of the elevator buttons are pressed. And then after that, I would just go, excuse me, and walk through the crowd and then press the button. And then everyone would go, oh, I didn't even know the elevator. No one pressed the button, because sheep follow sheep. And people tend to just, if you follow the pack, you'll never do anything effective. And so I remember seeing Naked and Afraid, and the guy said something that became a motto like a decade ago. They were grouped around. It was a group of them, and they didn't like this guy. And he said, what does lions care what sheep think? And when he said that, I was like, that is the mindset of an entrepreneur, because you have to be different to trust yourself and walk out on water on the invisible, where other people are looking for safety rails and they need those safe bumper guards. And a lot of times they'll want to do what you do. They'll be on the sidelines like, I wish I was just about to. And I understand, but there is a something innate that if it's not innate, you need to cultivate to allow you to say, I'm going to go the path less traveled. I'm going to do something that others are not doing. And when you start to believe in it, like you said, people will pick up that passion for it. So I would just say that's the number one thing for an entrepreneur, is to stop following the crowd. And you're not going to make a hit making the same record that someone else already put out. You're going to have to create your own sound. You have your voice, you have your own unique DNA, and you have to lean into it and develop it.
Yeah, for sure, man. So, all right, I always ask this question: 3 books that you would recommend for entrepreneurs to read that have helped you or that you believe could help others. What would those be?
All right. Well, first I'll say my book. I've written 2 books. One is called Redefining Mega. While that is, well, it's the keys not just to ministry, but it says to business and life. That book, Redefining Mega, will allow you to frame your thinking different. Okay, that's one. I would say The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz would be a great book that you probably would find a lot of value in, because we don't realize how easy it is to stop believing big. It's safety in this dispensation has become, people are just looking to be safe. They're just looking to be okay. I just need, but when you can still like think outside that box and think above, I think that's a good one. A lot of my other books, the books I enjoy, actually are more self-help. But I'll say that another would be, because I'm going through stuff like Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, and I'm like, yeah, that's really about a lot of things, not just that. Here's a good one: Never Split the Difference. It's by Chris Voss. Never Split the Difference. This one is really good. Because what happens in sales is a lot of times people make concessions. They don't feel comfortable believing they should win. So they split their opportunity. They start cutting away at it. And before you know it, it's not an opportunity anymore. So never splitting the difference. That one is pretty powerful. That one is pretty good. It's gonna like recalibrate your approach to getting a deal done.
Awesome. So I'd love to ask this question too. Tell us about something along this entrepreneurial journey that you've had, from all over the place, from hip hop to pastoring to counseling to building a company that way and much more. Something that went wrong and something went south, that's not losing your wife, something in the business area that went south. And what'd you learn from it as you came out of that?
Yeah, that's easy. My biggest fail is our church that I planted with one member in this town I never lived in, which was in Vineland, New Jersey. I'm from New York. I ended up moving to Cherry Hill, but I end up, when I go into ministry, in Vineland, in a very small, everyone went to school together community, very guarded community. And we end up becoming the fastest growing church plant in that city. So much so NBC came down and featured us for things we were doing in the community, because I was always, community, street promotions, that kind of person. So that church, I would bring national personalities. I was on the Christian national networks, is TBN and Word Network, and them. I was featured on those shows. I'm there, and I thought, and so did some of the national pastors who we had come. They would come in and say, man, listen, as long as you don't have a moral failure, man, this thing ain't going to, this is going to last. And I was like, absolutely. I thought, I felt it was that kind of indestructible system. As long as I don't do nothing crazy, we're good. Well, when we went to expand, after me going through all the elevations, you can go through, other pastors see the success, and they just, okay, we want you to be our bishop, our apostle. I get consecrated to every title known to man except Jesus the Christ. Then after that, you just get to the place where you go, what's next? So I said, I'll plant another church. And that's how I end up in Florida, because I'm like, okay, I don't want to plant it in New Jersey. I'm not from Jersey. When I planted, what I never paid attention to was the culture of the organization. Now, we had about 35 people on staff, several hundred members, 3 services. Every mayor that came into their administration would get our choir to sing their inaugurations. We were the community. I was the police department chaplain 7 years for the police department in the city. So we're staple points. Had beautiful building, everything. And I never took into consideration the culture, and I never understood the value of change management. So as these changes was occurring, I thought I was helping, which is in dynamic thinking, as you know, if you put pressure here, something else comes up. Well, I'm putting pressure on one side, not paying attention to what's coming up. And I'm moving things around, and I'm literally unraveling the secret sauce of our success. And by the time I realized that we had already built this other home here, the bank said, you can keep your home in Jersey. Well, you can build this one here on the water. I did all that. That was wonderful. Living the dream. And the dream fell apart. And when it fell apart, I was like, I didn't realize people are more connected to me than the institution that was built, and that broke my heart, because I thought I was operating an organism when I really was operating an organization. The CEO falls, the stock falls, you know what I mean? And while there was no moral fall, my moving to come here to plant, everybody's yes. And it's like, no, we really didn't want you to go, because I didn't have the right culture. And so I think if I knew about what it takes to grow and do multiple sites, I could have survived and had something. And starting all over, which is where I find myself in ministry now, is really, really a place I would tell someone to avoid if you could. It's no fun, especially if I look back, I can get salty. I don't spend my time looking back. I just tend to look forward, but I do. And that's why the Google certification in project management, I'm a rat for everything now that is teaching systems and stuff, because had I had systems, I was taught administration, not systems. I wasn't taught about culture. I was taught about, so I would tell, someone to learn from my mistake is to really be a student of more than just what you're doing, but how it affects everybody you're doing it with. That's
profound, man. That's profound. All right. One final golden nugget. What would you say to all the people listening to Dr. Vandy Coulter right now, giving us tons and tons of wisdom? What would you say? Last words to the folks out there.
I would make it an invitation for them to visit our website, kind of get an opportunity to learn about what we do. I feel if it isn't profound already, it's not going to be any more profound in anything I said. I would just really love to serve those watching with their emotional and relational kind of dynamics. And to see, I'm like somebody who really loves to see other people succeed. So I would love to just help others succeed. And that's why we do free consultations and everything else, to just say, hey, come on, just hear it, and when folk finally feel heard and finally feel like, oh, there's a chance, it doesn't have to end. That to me is more profound than anything I can say, so for me, it always comes back to serving people. So the profound thing I would say is to take a step and lean in to giving your relationship and doing, because I do virtual counseling, I've got clients all over the country, and it's wonderful. And, it makes it great. So I just think marriage is really important. In a limbic way, you deserve to be happy.
That's right.
Is the deal. It's just that. So,
well, Dr. Vandy, thank you very much. Everybody, loveandhappiness.net. Obviously, it's in the notes here, but loveandhappiness.net. Go check out what Dr. Vandy has to offer, as he is one of the people making this world a better place. And I hope you are too. Ridgely here signing off for now, and I'll see you on the next Move Go program. Bye for now. Thank you very much, Dr. Vandy.
Thank you for having me. Take care.